The first time I saw my name listed under 3 different delinquent loans, I thought it was a clerical error, a glitch, something minor. Then I saw the address tied to them, my parents' house, and that was the moment I realized it wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. Before we begin, if you've ever had your trust broken by someone who was supposed to protect you, you'll understand this story. If it resonates with you, consider liking or subscribing, and tell me where you're watching from. I read every comment. I was 27 when I decided to check my credit report. Not because I was worried, because I was proud. I had just been pre-approved for a small business loan. I'd spent years building my credit carefully, paid off my student loans early, never missed a payment, lived within my means even when it was uncomfortable. Responsibility had always been my thing. Growing up, I was the mature one, the quiet daughter, the one who didn't ask for much. I learned early that stability mattered more than attention. I still remember being 9 years old, sitting at the kitchen table while my parents argued in low voices about overdue bills. I pretended to color, but I was listening. My father said, "We just need time." My mother said, "Time doesn't stop interest." That sentence stayed with me. Time doesn't stop interest. It became something I applied to everything: money, relationships, trust. If you ignore something long enough, it grows. So when I logged into my credit monitoring account that night, I expected a clean report. Instead, I saw 3 red flags: 2 personal loans, 1 high-limit credit card, all opened within the past 18 months, all with balances, all past due. I stared at the lender details, then the mailing address, my childhood home. My chest tightened in a way that felt familiar, not panic, recognition. I called the credit bureau first. "Have you lived at this address?" the representative asked. "Yes, years ago." "Are these accounts yours?" "No." "Then you'll need to file a fraud dispute." Fraud? The word echoed. It felt dramatic, legal, clinical. But when I asked for copies of the original applications, everything became less abstract. The signature on the loan documents looked like mine, carefully copied. The social security number was correct, the birth date was correct, the employer listed was my current company, which meant whoever filled this out had updated information, someone who had access. My hands shook when I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart." I skipped small talk. "Did you use my social security number for loans?" There was a pause. Not confusion. Pause. "Where is this coming from?" she asked carefully. "I'm looking at my credit report." Silence again. Longer this time. "I was going to tell you," she said softly. The words landed like déjà vu I didn't want. "You were going to tell me," I repeated. "We were in a tight spot. Your father's hours were cut. We didn't qualify on our own. So you used me." "It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" She inhaled slowly. "We just needed something temporary. We were going to make the payments." "But you didn't." Another silence. I felt that old childhood sensation of listening through walls, only now the argument was mine. "You have good credit. You're stable. It wouldn't hurt you long term." It wouldn't hurt you. That sentence cut deeper than the loans. "Mom," I said quietly, "this is identity theft." "Don't say it like that," she snapped. "Like what? Accurate?" She exhaled sharply. "It's family." There it was, as if that erased legality, as if blood rewrote contracts. "You signed my name. I practiced it from your birthday cards." The honesty stunned me. Practiced? I pictured her sitting at the same kitchen table from my childhood, bills stacked, pen in hand, copying my loops and curves. Not malicious, but deliberate. "How many accounts?" I asked. "3," she admitted. "Are there more?" A beat too long. "No." I didn't believe her. That was the moment something shifted. Not rage, clarity. "You should have asked," she said. "We didn't want to burden you. You burdened me anyway." Silence. I walked to my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The room felt smaller. My name had been used without my knowledge. My identity had been stretched across financial contracts I didn't consent to, and the people who were supposed to protect me had signed my name like it belonged to them. "Are you going to report us?" she asked. Us, not just her. My father was involved. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "You wouldn't do that to your own parents." I stared at the wall. "I didn't do this." She didn't respond. And in that silence, I realized something. They hadn't seen it as stealing. They'd seen it as borrowing from the most reliable source available, me. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying her voice in my head. "We didn't want to burden you," as if consent was optional when intention felt justified. By morning, I had done what I always do when something feels unstable. I made a plan. I called the lenders directly. Each conversation was nearly identical. Yes, this account was opened online. Yes, the documents include a signature. Yes, payments were made for several months. "How were payments made?" I asked. "From a checking account ending in 4421. That wasn't mine. I knew my account numbers by memory. "Can you confirm the name on that account?" "I'm sorry, we can't disclose that information unless you file a formal fraud report." Formal, official, permanent. I thanked them and hung up. Then I pulled up my full credit report again. This time, I didn't just skim the balances. I studied the timeline. The first loan had been opened 16 months ago. The credit card 14 months ago. The second loan 11 months ago. Which meant this wasn't a one-time desperate decision. It was repeated, calculated, sustained. My chest felt tight, but my mind felt strangely calm. There's something about betrayal that clarifies you. It strips away denial. It forces you to look at what is instead of what you wish it was. I drove to my parents' house that afternoon without telling them. It looked exactly the same. Same cracked driveway, same faded mailbox, same curtains in the front window. My childhood home. The place where I learned to ride a bike. The place where I used to sit on the porch steps and promise myself I'd be financially stable one day. I knocked once and let myself in. My mother was at the kitchen table. Of course she was. Bills spread out, calculator beside her. For a moment, it felt like time folding in on itself. "You should have called," she said, startled. "I wanted to see you." She knew that wasn't the whole truth. My father came out of the hallway a few seconds later. He looked older than I remembered, more tired. "We were going to talk to you," he said. "When?" I asked calmly. They exchanged a glance. "We were figuring it out." "How?" Silence. I pulled printed copies of the loan documents from my bag and placed them on the table. 3 contracts, 3 forged signatures. My father looked at them but didn't pick them up. My mother swallowed. "We thought we could handle it," she said. "You handled it by missing payments. It got harder than we expected." I let that sit. Then I asked the question I hadn't asked yet. Whose bank account were the payments coming from? My father hesitated. "Ours." "Joint account?" "Yes." "So both of you knew." Another glance between them. Another silent agreement. "Yes," he admitted. That was important, because until that moment, part of me had tried to isolate blame. Maybe it was just my mom. Maybe my dad didn't know. But now I saw it clearly. This was a joint decision, a family strategy. "You used my full name, my social security number, my employment details, my income. We needed to qualify," my father said quietly. "So you inflated my income on the applications." He didn't answer, which meant yes. "You committed federal fraud," I said. "Don't say it like that," my mother snapped again. "How should I say it?" She looked at me like I was being cruel. like accuracy was aggression. "We raised you," my father said. I stared at him. "And?" His jaw tightened. "We sacrificed for you." I felt something settle inside me, a boundary forming. "I didn't sign a contract at birth that allowed you to open credit lines in my name," I said evenly. My mother flinched. "Why are you talking like this?" "Because I'm not a child in this kitchen anymore." The room felt smaller, heavier. "You have good credit," my father repeated. "You'll recover." That sentence again. "You'll recover," as if resilience erased violation. "It's not just about the score," I said. "It's about trust." They didn't respond, and that silence told me everything. They had been thinking about survival, about numbers, about temporary solutions. They hadn't thought about what it meant for me to discover it on a credit report. They hadn't imagined the moment of shock, the humiliation of calling lenders and saying, "That wasn't me." They hadn't pictured my name typed into fraud investigation files. "You should have asked," I said quietly. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We were ashamed." "More ashamed than you'd be if I reported it?" That question hung heavy in the air. My father's voice lowered. "You wouldn't." He didn't say it as a question. He said it as an assumption. Because historically, I didn't push back. I absorbed. I fixed. I adapted. But something about seeing my identity used as a financial tool shifted that pattern. "I haven't decided what I'm doing yet," I said. My mother stood up suddenly. "You're not going to destroy this family over money." I met her eyes. "You already did." Silence fell so thick it felt physical. For a moment, none of us moved, and I realized something quietly devastating. They weren't afraid of what they had done. They were afraid of consequences. I left their house before anyone raised their voice. That surprised me. In my childhood, conflict meant volume. It meant doors slamming and accusations thrown like plates. But this time, the quiet was heavier than shouting. On the drive home, I replayed my father's words. "You wouldn't." Not "please don't," not "we're sorry," just confidence that I would protect them, because I always had. That night, I pulled out an old storage box from the back of my closet. Inside were birthday cards I'd saved over the years, handwritten notes from my parents, my mother's looping cursive, my father's sharper print. I compared them to the forged signatures on the loan documents. The resemblance wasn't perfect, but it was close. Close enough for a digital approval system, close enough for lenders who only required an electronic upload. It wasn't a desperate scribble. It was careful, practiced. That detail mattered more than I wanted it to. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with a fraud attorney, not because I wanted to press charges, because I needed clarity. Her office was quiet, neutral gray walls, soft lighting, no judgment in her expression. After I explained everything, she asked one question. "Are you looking for justice or protection?" The distinction caught me off guard. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want my name back." She nodded. "Then we focus on documentation, credit restoration, and legal insulation." Insulation. A barrier. A line between me and what they'd done. "If you file a full fraud report," she explained, "the lenders will investigate. If they determine identity theft, the balances will be removed from your credit file, but law enforcement may get involved." May. That word felt like a tightrope. "And if I don't?" "You assume the debt or attempt private repayment." Private repayment. Meaning I quietly carry $80,000 so my parents don't face legal consequences. The old version of me would have considered it, would have calculated monthly payments, would have asked herself how much she could absorb without collapsing. But the new version of me was tired. Not angry, just tired. 12 months from now, the attorney said gently, do you want to still be paying for a choice you didn't make? No. The answer came quickly. No. I filed the formal fraud affidavit that afternoon. Every account listed, every forged document attached. I expected to feel dramatic. Instead, I felt steady, like I was finally naming something that had been quietly wrong for a long time. The investigation began within days. Lenders froze the accounts. Collection calls stopped. A fraud investigator contacted me for additional details. Then my father called. How could you? He demanded. His voice wasn't sad, it was offended. How could I what? I asked calmly. Report us. You reported yourselves when you filled out those applications. That's not the same. It is legally. Silence. You're letting strangers look at our finances, he said. You let strangers believe I owed them money. The conversation fractured there. He accused me of overreacting, of embarrassing the family, of choosing paperwork over blood. But I didn't raise my voice, because I had finally understood something important. They weren't upset about morality, they were upset about exposure. That evening, my mother called separately. She sounded smaller. They're asking questions, she whispered. I know. I didn't think it would go this far. You opened 3 accounts in my name, I replied softly. How far did you think it would go? She started crying, and for a second I felt that old reflex. Comfort her, minimize it, tell her we'll fix it. But I didn't. Instead, I let her cry, because her fear didn't belong to me. Are you trying to punish us? She asked. No, I said honestly. I'm trying to protect myself. That sentence had become my anchor. Protect myself. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't dramatic. It was necessary. Over the next few weeks, more details surfaced. The income listed on the applications had been inflated. My employer's name had been entered correctly. My phone number had been altered by 1 digit so verification calls wouldn't reach me. It wasn't careless, it was strategic. That realization hurt in a different way. Not just that they'd used my information, but that they'd taken steps to avoid being caught. That required intention, planning, conversations behind closed doors. One afternoon, I found myself sitting alone in my apartment, staring at the wall. I wasn't crying, I wasn't shaking, I was grieving something less tangible. The idea that my parents would never intentionally put me at risk. That illusion was gone. In its place was something more complicated. They had been afraid, financially cornered, ashamed, and instead of asking for help, they chose control. They chose secrecy. They chose my identity as collateral. I remembered being 10 years old and overhearing my father say, "We'll figure it out. She doesn't need to know." Back then, it was about unpaid electricity bills. Now it was about me, and I finally understood. They had always protected me from information. This time, they protected themselves instead. A week later, the fraud investigator informed me that the case was being referred to the district attorney's office for review. I felt the weight of that. Not triumph, not panic, just weight. That night, I looked at my phone for a long time before calling my mother. "I want you to hear this from me," I said when she answered. "The case may move forward legally." She was quiet. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. "I know. Are we going to lose you over this?" The question surprised me. I thought about it carefully. You didn't lose me because of money. You risked losing me when you decided I wouldn't find out. Silence. And for the first time, I realized something else. The real fracture wasn't the debt. It was the assumption that I would always absorb the damage quietly. The referral to the district attorney didn't mean immediate arrests. It meant review, documentation, assessment, time. And in that waiting, something unexpected happened. The silence between us changed. For weeks after the referral notice, my parents didn't call. No guilt-heavy messages, no defensive arguments, just space. At first, I thought it was anger. Then I realized it was fear, the kind that forces reflection. One afternoon, I received a call from the fraud investigator assigned to the case. "We've completed the internal review," he said. "The lenders are willing to remove the accounts permanently from your credit file under confirmed identity theft." Relief washed over me in a quiet wave. "And the criminal review?" I asked. "It's under consideration. However, cooperation and restitution discussions may influence the outcome." Restitution. The word hung heavy. "They'd need to sign formal admissions and enter structured repayment agreements," he explained. "I already admitted it in writing," I said. "Yes, that helps." That helps. Strange how those two words carried so much. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my hands. My name was coming back to me. Not perfectly, not instantly, but legally, officially. For the first time in months, I felt something steady. Not victory, not revenge, just stability. That evening, my father called. His voice sounded different, not defensive, tired. "We've spoken to an attorney," he said. I waited. They explained what this could mean. "And?" I asked. "We're willing to sign whatever formal agreement is needed." There was no argument in his tone, no pride, just reality. "Why now?" I asked quietly. He paused. "Because we finally understand the scale." The scale. Not just the money, the breach. "We didn't think of it as stealing," he admitted. "I know. We thought, you're our daughter. We'd make it right before it hurt you." It already hurt me. He exhaled slowly. Yes, that acknowledgement mattered. Not dramatic, not apologetic, just honest. A few days later, we met at their attorney's office. Neutral territory. No childhood walls, no emotional history in the furniture, just paperwork and consequence. My mother looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, emotionally. She didn't try to hug me. She didn't cry. She just sat down and said, "I'm sorry." No qualifiers, no explanations, just that. The attorney walked us through the restitution plan, structured payments, financial counseling requirements, signed admissions, a clause stating any future unauthorized use of my information would result in immediate legal escalation. It was clinical, precise, protective. As I signed the final document confirming my cooperation with the bank's conditional resolution, I felt something shift. Not reconciliation, recalibration. My parents were no longer figures of unquestioned authority in my life. They were adults who had made a serious mistake, and I was an adult choosing how close to stand afterward. After the meeting, my mother stopped me in the parking lot. "I keep thinking about when you were little. You used to sit at the table when we argued about bills. I thought you didn't understand." "I understood enough," I replied. She nodded slowly. "We didn't want you to grow up worrying about money." I held her gaze. "So you made sure I did." That landed. She looked down at her hands. "I was ashamed," she whispered. "Not just of the debt, of needing help from you." "You didn't need to be ashamed," I said gently. "I know that now." And for the first time, I believed her. Not because she said the right words,
because she wasn't trying to control the outcome anymore. Weeks passed. My credit report updated. The red flags disappeared. My score began climbing back to where it belonged. The lenders sent formal letters confirming removal. Every time I opened my email and saw those confirmations, I felt lighter. But something else had changed too. I didn't call my parents automatically anymore. I didn't send money without discussion. I didn't assume their emergencies were mine to solve. And when they needed help, they asked. Sometimes I said yes. Sometimes I said no. The first time I said no, my heart pounded. But the world didn't collapse. They didn't explode. They just said, okay. That was new. One evening, my mother called just to talk. Not about money, not about legal updates, just to ask how work was going. It felt strange, simpler, less loaded. I've started financial counseling, she told me. That's good. I don't want to ever feel that desperate again. Neither did I, but for different reasons. Before hanging up, she said something that stayed with me. I should have trusted you enough to ask. That sentence felt like closure, not perfect closure, but honest. The truth is, the credit report exposed more than fraud. It exposed a pattern, a belief that I would always absorb the fallout, always be strong, always recover. But strength without boundaries isn't strength, it's erosion. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't eroding quietly. I was choosing where the line stood.
The case never made it to a courtroom. The district attorney's office reviewed the file, considered the signed admissions, the restitution agreement, the documented cooperation, and chose conditional diversion instead of prosecution. No handcuffs, no trial, no public record beyond what already existed in financial databases. But the consequences were real. Structured payments, mandatory financial counseling, monitoring, and most importantly, documentation. The lenders sent final confirmation letters. The fraudulent accounts were permanently removed from my credit report. The late payments were erased. My score climbed steadily back into the range I had worked so hard to build. But something inside me didn't go back, because this was never just about numbers. It was about the moment I saw my own name used without my knowledge. The moment I realized the people who raised me believed they could access my identity like it was an extension of theirs. Love doesn't grant ownership. That was the lesson. A month after everything settled, I went to dinner at my parents' house, the first time since the investigation closed. The house felt the same, but I didn't. I noticed things differently. The way bills were organized neatly now, the absence of secrecy in the air, the quiet effort. My father spoke more carefully. My mother asked before offering advice. There was space between us. Not distance, space. And I realized space isn't the same as loss. Halfway through dinner, my mother said softly, "We almost ruined your future." It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't tearful, it was factual. I set my fork down. "You didn't ruin it," I said. "You risked it." She nodded. "I didn't understand how serious it was," she admitted. "You didn't want to." That wasn't an accusation, just truth. She didn't argue. "I thought being your parent meant I could lean on you," she said. "You can lean, you just can't replace my signature." For the first time in months, we both smiled. Small, careful, but real. After dinner, I stood alone in the backyard for a moment. The same yard where I used to swing on a rusted metal swing set. The same place where I promised myself I'd grow up stable. Stable didn't mean perfect. It meant self-owned. For years, I thought strength meant absorbing chaos without complaint, being the reliable one, the unshakable one. But strength without boundaries is just quiet self-abandonment, and I had finally stopped abandoning myself. That's what the credit report really exposed, not just fraud, a dynamic, a pattern where my stability was assumed, where my resilience was expected, where my silence was interpreted as permission. Now, when my parents need help, they ask. Sometimes I help, sometimes I don't. And when I say no, I don't explain myself into exhaustion. I don't justify. I don't apologize for protecting my own future. That's new. One evening, a few weeks ago, my mother called. "Can I run something by you?" she asked. 3 years ago, she would have simply done it. Now she asks, and that small shift tells me more than any apology ever could. Trust isn't rebuilt through emotion. It's rebuilt through behavior, slowly, consistently. The truth is, I don't hate them. I understand fear. I understand financial desperation. I even understand the temptation to justify a bad decision when it feels temporary. But understanding doesn't require acceptance, and love doesn't require self-sacrifice. When I think back to the moment I opened that credit report, I remember the shock, the tightness in my chest, the disbelief. But I also remember something else: clarity. The moment I realized I had a choice: protect them or protect myself. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. Not loudly, not angrily, not vindictively, just firmly. And that quiet firmness changed everything. If this story felt personal to you, tell me what boundary you had to set. Thank you for listening.